Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today I want to address something, as I have in other videos during this week, from videos that have gone by. But in this particular instance we're also going to be looking at some comments that I got, because I feel like it's important to address some of these. Now the video that we're talking about is the NPC meme video that I took a look at last week, and that I basically went, yeah, this doesn't make any sense whichever way you look at it because of the intent, as it were. Now, a lot of people threw out some various responses, and we'll get to those in a minute, but I feel like some of the responses, to a degree, come from where I sounded very exasperated in the addressing of this meme. And part of it, I'll admit, is exasperation with the meme, because it's a case of going, I was commenting about memes, I very much enjoy memes, I spend a lot of time looking at memes, as it were, for the sake of enjoyment and so on. As I listed off in the video that I did about memes a couple of weeks ago, I have my favourites, as it were, the things that I might go back and take a look at to improve my day, or the various kind of GIFs, meme GIF videos and other bits and pieces across the internet, across YouTube in particular, that I subscribe to, that I go and take a look at when they throw out new videos, just to see what's out there, just to see what's fun, what's not. But I was also probably sounding more exasperated than I would have otherwise, because I literally recorded that video, and this may very well have been an error on my part, but I very much recorded that video literally straight after the video that I did about the viral video where the chap grinds up the female Viagra and puts it into his girlfriend's drink. In which case that was infuriating to me, and so I was recording the second video coming off that one, and so as a result I probably sounded more exasperated with the content than I actually was. Unfortunately, I tend to do a fair amount of my recording kind of one after the other, hence me always wearing the same shirts in these videos and things like that. And so as a result, sometimes there's a bit of a carryover, a bit of a carry-off, and I could also quite happily see how maybe I didn't get all of my points across in the best way because of that tone, and tone being a big part of communication. But in saying that, one of the best ways I feel that I can respond to this stuff is by going and taking a look at the comments that people have put on this video, left on these videos for me, on this video for me, and addressing them, and having that conversation that I've talked about having before, that we've had before, in regards to kind of poking holes in things that people have thrown at me that have been maybe more toxic, or just addressing legitimate concerns and having legitimate thoughts and opinions around these things that overall lead to a constructive thing overall. The one thing that I would point out is that at no point during that video, during the prior video, and at no point during this one, will I ever say that people shouldn't make this meme. You're allowed to do and say and create whatever it is that you want. The thing that kind of stood out to me is that these memes are being created with a very significant lack of self-awareness from where I'm sat, and I'm sat in the middle. I am very pointedly a moderate that sits at the cross between the two scales in regards to, or within the matrix, as it were, of political views. And I've mentioned in other videos, the reason why I sit there is because I realise that there are good ideas that come from the left, good ideas that come from the right, good ideas that come from a more authoritarian standpoint, as well as good ideas that come from a more libertarian standpoint. And so as a result, yeah, I want to be in the middle to see all of the best ideas that are the most practical, most workable that can be put together, and I want to have those discussions, those good old debates from ancient Greece and all that kind of stuff, brought forward into the modern age in the same way, so that we're actually engaging with each other and discussing with each other. And that's one of the issues that I have with this meme. But anyway, let's get into... Oh, is my face still there? No, my face isn't. My face is broken. Do you know what? Sod it. Let's do this. Okay, so let's start off at the bottom. Let's start off with... I think that's supposed to be Inuyasha, because I think that's the anime, right? But Inuyasha 360, the point of this meme is the hypocrisy of the progressive types. They don't think for themselves. Well, okay, fine, I will quite happily admit that there is a group of people on the left who do very much that. They don't think for themselves. However, there are also an awful large number of conservative or traditionalist individuals that don't think for themselves. You know, the number of people that will throw themselves under all kinds of various buses, and be ridiculed online at large for some of their views that, quite frankly, don't really have any grounding, that come from a much more traditionalist or conservative mindset, especially those that also relate back to religion. You know, and there's an awfully large amount of hypocrisy on both sides of the political spectrum, and that's what I take umbrage with on, as I said, both sides. But when you are throwing out a meme like this to ridicule, all it does is shut down the conversation. So where you're going, right, well, they're shutting down the conversation with their tantrums, we're going to meet them with mocking and ridicule. Well, sure, but if you're wanting that conversation, then you need to be the adult that's standing there and bringing them out of that tantrum and engaging them in that discussion, rather than, you know, you've got a kid that's sat there crying and then you're the other kid with a stick poking them because they're crying. Neither comes to a positive outcome. But anyway, what's the next part? Sure, many people along the political spectrum don't think for themselves. Yeah, that's the point of my video. That was the whole point. The both sides are as bad as each other, so the meme just adds to the negativity. But the contrast between the holier-than-thou progressives and reality is the point. Well, what about the holier-than-thou conservatives? The holier-than-thou traditionalists? Because they're there too. I mean, that's not really. You've agreed with the point of the video, which again I fully admit may or may not have been most constructively put across, considering my mindset when creating that video. But hey ho. But that's why it was banned from Twitter. I mean, Twitter's done all kinds of things, so I'm not entirely going to speculate around that anymore. But still, NPCsimulator.com. That all comes from this person here. Okay, fair enough. Well, let's take a look at the comment from the top, because I don't. That is a news site, I think. 100% fed up. Or like at least a kind of commentary site. That's fine. YouTube, fine. I'm not sure about that. But either way, let's take a look at this person's comment. Dude, I think you missed the point. I mean, I don't think I did. You were ridiculing people, suggesting that they are guilty of groupthink. Fine. I get that. But there's groupthink on both sides. And it's negative. You know, the accusation, as much as anything else, is negative. It's you might see a lot of people having those outbursts of PC culture and negativity on that side. Fine. You got to be the bigger man, though. You know, if you have a person screaming in your face, the best way to deal with that person is not give them a response. You don't throw fuel on the fire. But anyway, but that's okay. Well, thank you. You seem to be a rather rational person who is more than capable of thinking for himself. I try. Thanks. Something like the NPC meme was just not made for you. Fair enough. It's a memetic virus made for essentially social justice warriors to point out that they lack the agency and critical thinking skills necessary to think for themselves in an independent manner. I mean, it wasn't though, was it? Because memes, in terms of a social viral element, hence viral media, viral video, all that kind of stuff, is designed for those social groups that already attribute themselves to it. You know, it's very much tribal. It's cultural development, cultural change kind of thing, and those cultures tend to change within themselves rather than the outside. So it wasn't really made for the social justice warriors, was it? It was made for the other people that want to combat social justice warriors, that want to dehumanize and kind of make that gap between themselves and social justice warriors, right? That's who this was actually made for. Because going and again, if you've got a small child who's having a tantrum over something, pointing out that they lack agency and they lack critical thinking skills in a way that just takes the piss out of them isn't going to help them calm down. It's just going to make them more upset. It's poking the bear kind of thing. It's not really for them. It's for the people who want to make themselves feel better about being them instead of the other person. It's that tribal divide stuff, right? And the other thing that stands out to me is you quite aptly describe this. Sorry, your name was The Blob Inc. 1. Interesting name. But again, you're quite right in describing it as essentially a social virus, a mimetic virus. But this is where I've had this discussion with a few other people as well, and I kind of just touched on it briefly in the first meme video I did about Bowsette and how I love the creativity of these things. But also cognitively, as people, biologically, when we have a virus, when we get infected with something, we don't just necessarily let it run its course. There are good and bad sides to biological infection of various sorts. All the bacteria in our gut, that's usually a good thing because they help regulate what we consume and how our body functions. But when it comes to something that's more malicious, we can take stock of it, we can take note of it, and we can break it down. In terms of memes, we can do the same thing. One of the more popular videos on the channel is the one that I did around improving critical thinking. And, a large part of improving your critical thinking is awareness, and that includes awareness in regards to the things that you're taking on and analysing those things. In which case, taking a look at the NPC meme, the first couple, I'll admit, I thought they were funny, just straight up. But then as I saw more of them popping up, it became a case of kind of going, yeah, but really? And especially when there were some that were kind of coming from the various Twitter accounts and things, where the only thing that suggested that they were an NPC was maybe the picture, not even the name on the account. And they were suggesting that people should vote on the wrong day, or they were trying to throw out misinformation in various ways. And so, when I see those getting removed from Twitter because they're being more conscious about spreading fake news or misinformation, I feel like that's maybe the thing that we should be doing for ourselves as well, taking stock of where the line has to be drawn. And that's part of what I was kind of trying to get across in that last video in regards to the lack of self-awareness that this meme and the people that have been propagating it have kind of thrown out there. Because, if you get infected with something, even if it's a social mimetic thing, breaking down your values and understanding your own ins and outs, cutting off limiting beliefs, cutting clean on the things that you've internalized so that you can examine them. All those things are what I do as a coach with clients generally anyway. And so as a result, when I see this, it's like there are a lot of people that probably have just taken this at face value. Some have taken it too far. Some have invested too much in it. And some don't realize how they are being almost as bad as the people that they are ridiculing to an extent. And so that's where I wanted to broach that. But anyway, let's continue. All too often nowadays, we have a lot of rather unintelligible, poorly informed people who run around autistically screeching at others who they disagree with. Yeah, I agree, and that's on both sides. And that was again, that's the kind of point that we're getting to. Worse yet, when one tries to have a civil discussion with the above-mentioned sorts, they usually resort to calling you a Nazi or a racist or a rape apologist or whatever buzzword they have been trained to say, because they lack the education to properly explain themselves, or for that matter, actually understand what they are trying to say. Again, I agree, but then again, this isn't just on one side, because whilst you've got the people on the left, say, screaming Nazi or racist or whatever in someone's face, which I've had, I'm sure there are an awful lot of people in the moderate kind of sector, as it were, or moderate collective towards the middle of the whole political spectrum, political compass, who have had that. You get the same from people on the right who will, you'll put a study in front of them and try and go through it with them, and it hurts their feelings, and so they yell fake news in your face, or they tell you that you're stupid. They insult you as a person. They try and start a fight with you just as quickly, just as effectively as the people on the left with their screams of Nazi and racist and sexist and whatever else. You get exactly the same thing from the other side, just on maybe slightly different topics. These are the sorts of people that usually belong to crazed feminist groups and Antifa. Yeah, I agree. But then again, as I said, you also get the crazy religious focus groups, or the crazy you could even go as far as flat earthers to one extent or another. But when you've got the anti-abortion lot, or you've got the various others who are the really rabid Trump supporters, or the group in, what was it, Charlottesville, who included the chap that ran down a whole load of people in his car. You've got crazies on all sides, and this is what I'm saying. The lack of awareness, the lack of self-awareness in this particular meme, and again, it's a meme, it's spreading, it's a virus, it's a viral element that's spreading out across a lot of people. That's not healthy. It's an infection that isn't actually just a passing thing or whatever else, because it's spreading misinformation, and it's particularly unaware. As said, I'm not going to say you can't create it. Create what you want. I will support the freedom of someone to say what they wish and express themselves how they wish. But again, it still comes down to, I'm just trying to raise awareness of the in my mind, it seems kind of hypocritical to ridicule someone for behaviours that your own side is also exhibiting. We see that time and time again on both sides of politics, both in politics in terms of career politicians doing it, and in terms of supporters like feminist groups, Antifa, Trump supporter groups, super PACs, whatever. We see it on all sides, and this video and about the meme, and now addressing some of the comments here, it's a case of going, yeah, this is kind of not great. You can say and do what you want, but there should always be that awareness around what you do and what you want. And that's what I advocate for on this channel in a lot of different ways, and so this is why I'm commenting on this stuff. But I'm also glad that your comment is pretty well thought out, even if I'm maybe bringing up a couple of counterpoints. But anyway, needless to say, basically 80% of the world is sick of their mindless shit and unintelligible natterings, and now something must be done about them. I would argue that something has to be done about all of the fringes of the political world on all sides. Especially in where I am in the UK, our political system has it's just not fit for purpose anymore. It's just broken. Excuse me. We've got so many unelected individuals there who are so very disconnected from reality, because so many are there on like hereditary peerages and stuff like that. And we've got such an extreme divide in regards to certain things in our government, in our parliament over here, that the discussion just comes down to jeering at each other so often, and that's not constructive. So yeah, I agree that something has to be done, but it has to be done on both sides, because both sides have just drifted off towards the edge and are slowly slipping over it. So I don't disagree, but I would include the other side of it as well, because it's not just the groups that you have mentioned. There has to be balance here, because if you remove it on one side, then what happens is you get that weird tilt, and that weird tilt is not necessarily something that we want either, because we've been there before, and it's not necessarily the nicest of places. We've seen this is the thing, historically we've seen the extremes of both left and right in various places around the world, and right now we can see the the most moderate and balanced of places as well, and see how they function. And a good number of those where there's a lot more just freedom and acceptance and happiness, we see them functioning very well compared to countries that are currently very divided. So, yeah, I agree. We need to do something about this, and the way that I see to do it is through education and discussion, which is, again, why I've been making these videos in addition to the coaching ones, the ones that I'm actually qualified in, an expert in, just me throwing out my coaching lens onto commentary or onto news or something else, just to kind of raise some questions, have these discussions. But anyway, the majority of people nowadays don't just want to go pick up guns and do away with them, because, believe it or not, most people, unlike the NPCs, are actually quite civilized and would rather not resort to violence. That never works anyway. I agree, it doesn't work. We need education, we need greater discussion. But for that to happen, the childish bullshit needs to disappear, and it needs to disappear from whichever side gains self-awareness, a greater level of self-awareness, first. And if you guys, if the people on the more right side of things, or even the people in the middle who are maybe supporting more of these ideas, they need to be the people to do it. There has to be a first step somewhere rather than just a demand. And again, we're all human, we're all fallible. No one's perfect, and people can get led astray very, very easily. And so as a result, yeah, we need to start breaking these things down. But there's always also going to be that degree of groupthink somewhere in our society. There has to be. It's the way we're built. After thousands of years of moving as herd animals, of hunting in packs, of developing into tribes, of always sticking in groups to further develop our communities for the sake of safety, for the sake of survival, there's always going to be that level of following the leader. And for an awful lot of more normal people who don't necessarily have the time to think about this stuff, or the time to work on this stuff, or anything like that, it becomes something that's much harder for them to do, and it becomes something that they actively don't want to do if they find that they're being ridiculed. But I also agree that it becomes something that they don't want to do if they're getting insulted and tantrumed at either. But this is what I'm saying. Neither side at the moment, be it through this meme or be it through the same mimetic viruses, as you put it, on the left side that create this groupthink, neither side is going to have a great time, and they are only ever going to continue to fight one another until such time as someone takes the first step. And unfortunately, the people in the middle tend to be the people who just want to get on with life. And so they just kind of run into a bit of a brick wall on both sides, So it's almost like the not militant, but the more neutral atheist community who just kind of go, live and let live, whatever. It doesn't exist there's a good chance it doesn't exist afterwards anyway, so, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to be a good person because I'm going to be a good person. And yet they get hated by everybody. All other world religions turn and hate on that group. And so it's kind of swings and roundabouts. One side has to make the move towards the proper discussions and the reasonable treatment first. And I realise that's hard to do, especially when there are people that are being, your community or another community is labelling each other as the enemy. It can be hard to move past that, especially for past transgressions. But again, it's something that has to happen at some point. Someone has to extend the olive branch, first. It's not just going to pick itself up off the ground and hurl itself at whoever needs it first, But yeah, I'm glad that people aren't going to pick up the guns and go and do that. But then again, at the same time, people are doing that. On small scale and on large scale. Protests clashing in the streets from both sides. People hailing each other with gunfire. Federal buildings being attacked by both angry mobs from the left and armed militias from the right. We've seen it all over the last few years, and it's saddening. I mean, I'm glad that we've not seen as much of it on this side of the pond, honestly, but it's still been here. So it's saddening. It's the world now is the most peaceful and successful it has been in all of human history, and yet we still just can't get over the fact that people are different, and we beat each other up, and it sucks. So we do the next best thing. The best way to deal with the ridiculous is to ridicule it. Again, I would refer you back to what I've just been saying, when it's like, maybe, but again, there has to be a line drawn. There has to be someone has to sit down at the table first. Someone has to open their arms to discussion and interaction first for anything to happen. There always has to be someone to make that first move, and it can be tough. As I said, it can be really difficult, but it's, as said, if you've got a kid angrily screaming and crying in a corner, you don't get that kid to cooperate by going over to them and ripping the piss out of them. Yeah? By making a joke of their situation. You only ever force them further into that corner and make them angrier and angrier. It's every single person out there in the world was a child, and good chances are they still are. Myself included. I'm not excluding myself from this at all. Deep down, everyone is a kid inside, because we get to adulthood and the expectations on us change, but we don't really. And so you have to look at these situations, especially when we're looking at groupthink, because like group psychology, I love one of the things that was said to me when I was actually studying psychology, and it was like, whenever you go in to present to a room, chances are the IQ drops for every person past 10. So by the time you've got 13 people, you are well past the 0 point on the whole IQ thing, potentially, depending on how smart the group is that you had in the first place. And it's like, right, so if you've got the average of a room, say, being about 100 in terms of their IQ, by that reckoning, you add another 10 people, each one removing 10 points, and the IQ of a room, in a more serious sense, hits 0. In which case, well, guess what? You've got a small, angry, illiterate, and mute child screaming. That's it. How do you get that kid to cooperate? It's very difficult, but there are ways to do it, and going over and ripping the piss isn't necessarily the way to do it. But anyway, and if they want to be just another talking head, we have every right to point that out and mock them for it. Yeah, fine. I never said you didn't have the right to do it. You can create and do whatever you want. But at the same time, as with the whole freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequence, I'm just supporting the idea here of a little bit of extra awareness, especially self-awareness or self-awareness within a movement. Because again, it can only ever lead to more positive things down the line. Having that self-awareness, having that understanding. Whoops. Didn't mean to click that, but then I did anyway, just to check something. But anyway, yeah, I see what you're saying. But again, to my mind, there is a more constructive way to go about it. So, either way, I appreciate the thought out comment. I appreciate the expression here, but let's move on to your next things. Look at all those NPCs. Now again, before you weren't labeling them in that way, and that was fine because it was part of a more of a conversation. But once you actually start labeling them that way, it becomes a bit more iffy to me. But anyway, also worth mentioning that the Warren Farrell talk was about boys and men's crises. It's actually a really great talk. I think I've seen, if this is the video of it, let's not run it because I don't want to get run off. Yeah, no, I have seen some. I'm fairly certain I've seen this before. But yeah, this is the but these we're not having any of it. They were overly content violating other people's rights, shutting down free speech, and when it suits their agenda. Yeah, I completely get that, and I've complained about that in the past as well. I've done videos on no platforming. I've done videos ripping the piss to one degree or another, out of just how bad things like gender studies focused courses are, where we went through the curriculum. I think it was last year. I did a whole video breaking down the curriculum for one of these courses, and just finding my mind melting out my ears with how dumb the stuff was that was being taught for a fee, I would point out. So yeah, no, I completely agree. This is similar to how I can't remember which university it was, but you had Milo Yiannopoulos getting literally chased off campus, and the whole front of a university library building, I think it was, getting destroyed by angry protesters. And yeah, I agree. Those people are terrible people, and they at times silence discussion that should be had, and they do not follow the let your opponent talk, because if you let your opponent talk, they tend to hoist themselves by their own petard. But it's a case of going, yeah, that's negative, but do you want to be the same kind of negative? Because there is the same kind of negative on the opposite side as well. You know, the same kind of things that we've seen a couple of times recently. I think one of the most recent ones that I've seen was some of the ranting and raving around certain speakers at Politicon this year, which I think has just gone by. I think it finished, was it last week? Or by the time you guys see this, week before, I think. But I've seen some of the footage from that, and some of the just nasty bullshit, the heckling, and all that kind of stuff, because someone's just saying something they don't like. And this is from both sides. And it's negative all round. And it needs to stop all round. But as I've said, the point that I was dropping in that video, and the point that I'm reiterating, I think I've reiterated a few times now, is that ultimately there's no... You can't expect the solution to occur if the people that are causing... that you perceive to be causing the problem are in one state, and you are almost mirroring the same state. You know, if one person's being unreasonable, the situation doesn't get resolved by the other person dealing with them becoming also unreasonable. But anyway, either way, I very much appreciate your comment. What was this last one? Chance? Is this just a news article of the same thing? Oh, is this the Kavanaugh stuff? I mean, yeah, again, Brett Kavanaugh's situation and the stuff around him and all the other bits and pieces. To be fair, I watched Brett Kavanaugh's testimony, and I couldn't help but raise a few eyebrows from some of the things that I was seeing as a profiler. But again, it's like it's past, but people also have they have the right to protest as well. But it's if it's just chanting and stuff, well, I mean, that happens on, again, both sides. That's not you can't suppress their freedom of speech either. But it's I don't believe much, if any, of that came to violence from what I saw, and I could be wrong. And I'll take another look at that article in a bit. But as this video has already gone on for a fair while, oh well, it's okay. Thanks, I guess. I don't know if you're German, but thank you. But anyway, last one, plasma burns. Trump is Hitler. Only government should have guns. NPC logic check pass. I mean, I never said Trump was Hitler. I think he's a bit of a moron, but I don't think he's Hitler, because Hitler was evil and quite intelligent with it. Trump's just a bit dull. Bit of a clown, to be fair. At least in my opinion, and from a fair amount of the stuff that he says and does. Only government should have guns. In fact, I did a couple of videos kind of similar to this in regards to the gun control argument over a few things. I did one on the gun control discussion, and then I addressed the comments afterwards as well. Please feel free to just dig back and find those, because you will actually find out that no, I don't think the government just by themselves should have guns. But do I feel that gun control is maybe a good idea? Yeah, because if it comes down to you need to fill out a few extra bits of paperwork, wait a little bit longer to receive your firearms and ammunition, then, you know, that's a little bit more thorough, and the good people that just want it for sport or self-defense or whatever else, they still get their firearms, they still get their ammunitions and their ammunition, and they are fine. But that little bit of extra paperwork, that little bit of extra checking in on people potentially stops mass shootings, kids getting hold of weapons, all that kind of stuff that, especially in the United States, is just pretty terrible. In which case, you know, your comment there is something of a misrepresentation of my position. In fact, it's a complete opposite of my position in regards to guns at any rate. Trump's not Hitler. Trump's too dumb to be Hitler. Trump's just a loud gas bag that, quite frankly, has been poorly handled by the people who should be handling him. But hey ho. So yeah, I don't think your attempted knockdown of me there has necessarily made the correct impact, because it doesn't seem to address me at all. But anyway, thanks for the comment either way, Plasma Burns. But ultimately, I realised that the NPC meme video did get a fair number of dislikes. Fair enough. To those people, though, that would vehemently dislike what I was saying in that video, fair enough. You're completely entitled to your opinion. Unfortunately, I'm very results focused. I want to see an end to these issues. I want to see an end to these problems. I want to see people sitting down, discussing, and the world becoming a better place for it. Poking fun at children that are screaming over their toys being thrown out of the pram doesn't result in anything even kind of resembling constructive stuff. So, you know, either way, let me bring my face back. There we go. Either way, guys, I hope you found this video interesting. For those of you that commented from last week, if you're seeing this video now, I hope you find my comments and my responses appropriate. Either way, what it comes down to is just the when it comes to people flipping out, you don't want to just take the piss out of them if you're focused on a result. Never said you shouldn't do it. If you want to go do it, if you want to go poke the bear, if you want to go wind people up, fine. The video was there for people who maybe hadn't considered their position, hadn't thought about how their side mirrors the other side as well, and vice versa, and how, quite frankly, it doesn't achieve anything. Might make you feel a little bit better, but does it actually make any progress towards a better world? You know, especially considering this is the internet and everything spreads, apart from apparently some of my videos, but everything spreads at literally light speed between countries as soon as it gets dropped online. Light speed between people, just across the nation, across every nation, you know. So nowadays going, oh, we were just poking fun, doesn't really result in much, considering that there are people that will take it way too far, there are people that will take it out of context, there are people that will cause all manner of other problems with it. And so it's again just raising that awareness. You can't deal with a problem if you aren't aware of your situation and what the problem is. Best way to do it, be tolerant, open your, and I'm not talking about the kind of tolerance that the overly aggressive left are talking about. I'm talking about actually tolerant, as in, if you have a kid screaming in front of you, let them scream themselves out and then have the discussion with them. Sit them down, give them a hug, show some love and affection towards a fellow human being, rather than just taking the piss out of them because they started crying in the first place. But anyway, guys, I'm now parched. I'm going to get a drink. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you found this interesting, and I will see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video later. Take care.